elves in kind. Like his sister Rani, he had no desire to be a tool of the greater will, and so turned to blasphemy. For thousands of years, the demigods fought against one another, turning their entire force of will against each other so that they might gain the upper hand, gather the pieces of the Elden Ring, and reassemble it. And yet, none prevailed. Godric the runt of the litter even turned to the depraved art of grafting in hopes that it might elevate him and put him on the level of his relatives, though none more fiercely fought one another than Melania and Radahn, and their clash was the thing of legends, and yet neither could prevail against the other. Melania relied upon her Aeonian bloom to infect Radahn with the scarlet rot, leaving him weakened and mad, but not defeated. And for thousands of years, the lands tore themselves apart, and none could lay claim to any pieces of the now demolished Elden Ring save for what they had gathered at the outset of the Shattering, and the realm fell to ruin and madness. The greater will abandoned the demigods and instead turned its attention to those it had once abandoned, the Tarnished, far beyond the fog in another domain entirely. Hardened by death and divested of grace, the greater will extended the guidance of grace once more to these lowly peoples, drawing them to the lands between so that they might themselves seek the shattered pieces of the Elden Ring, lay claim to them, and reassemble them as they take the place of Elden Lord, restoring the Golden Order to prominence once again. And this is where you find yourself as the player when you start the game, in the Chapel of Anticipation. Like the Empyreans have their shadow, so too does a Tarnished have a companion granted to them to serve as a guide of the greater will, the Finger Maiden. Yet Finger Maidens are a rare breed, and what's more, there's someone hunting them to extinction, and you find yourself maidenless. For a time, in any case, there is one who would play the role of maiden should you find her at sites of grace peppered throughout the land. Melina, a girl of unknown origins who seeks her long-lost purpose at the base of the Erd Tree. She is capable of turning the runes you gather into strength, allowing you to achieve the power necessary to see the task of gathering the Elden Ring's fragments through to the end. And so onward the Tarnished marches, following the guidance of grace to each of the 7 shard bearers, so that they may challenge them and take their rune from them, and put an end to their ambitions once and for all. Indeed, the Tarnished challenges one and all. The decrepit Godric the Grafted, the heartbroken Rennala, the blasphemous Rykard, the world-weary goddess of rot, the desirous lord of blood, the calamitous general Radahn, all eventually fall to the Tarnished, who would become Elden Lord. And so the great rune fragments of the Elden Ring once again start to take form under their stewardship, and the Tarnished fights their way through the capital of Leyndell to come before the base of the Erd Tree, where they find Morgoth, the Omen King of the lands between, who has taken the throne in his mother's absence. It is very likely that he kept his identity a secret from all but his closest consigliaries, hence why his battlefield moniker is Margit the Fell Omen. This demigod stands between the Tarnished and the Erd Tree, and by extension Elden Lordship, so he must be felled. And he is. And the Tarnished claims his great rune as a prize. Then they make a discovery. The Erd Tree has blocked entrance to its innermost core with a wall of impenetrable thorns. In order to get past them, Melina suggests committing a cardinal sin, the burning of the Erd Tree, so that the thorns may wither away and allow passage to the goddess Marika. To do this, the Tarnished must travel beyond the Forbidden Lands to the mountaintops of the giants and defeat the sole living fire giant, so that they may stoke the fires of the fell flame. Melina makes herself kindling for this flame, and the Erd Tree burns, but there is one more task the Tarnished must accomplish if they are to claim the title of Elden Lord. They must release the rune of death, so that the gods may once again fall. So they travel to Farum Azula and confront Malekith, bearer of destined death, and defeat him, and once more, finally, death kisses the lands between. Mortals will once again fall in the great cycle of life and death, and the gods themselves are vulnerable to its reaching effects. Erd tree burning to cinders, the Tarnished returns to the ash-laden capital and to the base of the Erd tree, but finds their way blocked once more. The first Elden Lord and first among the Tarnished has finally returned to lay claim to what was once his. Yes, just as the Tarnished themselves has followed the guidance of grace, so too has the first among their kind, Godfrey HOLLiiWOOD, warrior and king, to secure once again his place as Marika's consort and to take the rune fragments from the defeated corpse of the Tarnished as a crown is warranted with strength. The Tarnished prevails against HOLLiiWOOD and finally finds themselves at the base of the Erd tree, whereupon Queen Marika lays captive and shattered. She falls and a new truth is finally revealed to us. She and Radagon are one and the same, two sides of the same coin, one male, one female. And it is because of this cursed incestuous union that Melania and Mikola were born star-crossed, and yet also because of this union of two gods, one and the same, that the twins were both born Empyreans. While they are both the same person in spirit, in mind they are not so, and Radagon remains loyal to the greater will and so seeks to claim the Elden Ring pieces from the Tarnished so that he might reassemble it himself. Yet, the Golden Radagon is no match for the Tarnished, and is felled in battle. Then comes the final test. The Elden Ring manifests as the Elden Beast once more so that the greater will might fully scrutinize the metal of the Tarnished and measure their intentions. It is a tough battle, but the Tarnished downs this creature and finally, through much trial and tribulation, repairs the Elden Ring and takes the throne as Elden Lord, monarch consort of Queen Marika, and a new era begins in the lands between. This is, of course, but one of several endings you can experience in Elden Ring. Another is to become the spouse of Ranni the Witch and begin a new age of the stars. You can also lay claim to the frenzied flame and aim to unify the entire world through chaotic fire, aka you burn everything to the ground for the frenzied flame outer god. And that, my friends, is the Cliff Notes version of the Elden Ring story from beginning to end, but it gives us all the pieces we need to know in order to understand the alchemical influences in this game. First, let's look at the Elden Ring itself, seen in its full glory here. The Elden Ring governs all physical and metaphysical laws of the lands between, including life and death, and wondrously, its interlocking rings and symbols actually resemble the Tree of Life in the Ripley Scrolls, imagery that can be linked directly to hermetic alchemy, not to mention the Erd Tree itself, which is a wellspring of the life and death cycle of Elden Ring. When people die in Elden Ring, they are touched by grace. They return to the Erd Tree before being reborn in the world anew. It is quite literally a tree of life. But there's more. Actually, a lot more, but let's talk about the magnum opus first. The magnum opus, or great work, was the alchemical term used by practitioners to describe their attempts to create the Philosopher's Stone out of what they called the prima materia, or prime matter. Prime matter was the stuff that made up all other stuff. Specifically, at certain points in history, they believed that all metals and all substances were fundamentally made out of sulfur and mercury in varying amounts and quantities. This made sulfur and mercury fundamental elements in the minds of alchemists, though sometimes they also included salt as a prima materia, all depending upon time and region. Therefore, you could take any substance in theory and turn it into any other if only you underwent the proper process. There were 7 metals in the world of alchemy: the noble gold and silver, and the base mercury, copper, iron, tin, and lead, each of which was associated with a planet and astrology. Similarly, the sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn in kind. Alchemists believed in the process of purification, which classically took 4 steps named after the colors substances would be after undergoing the alchemical process: Negredo, blackening; Albedo, whitening; Citrinitas, yellowing; and Rubedo, reddening. The final stage before the base metals fully transformed into the Philosopher's Stone, which could, in theory, turn any base metal into gold. This would be done by the manipulation of what some alchemists called corpuscles. During the first 3 stages, imperfect corpuscles were stripped away from a substance, while perfected corpuscles were introduced to heal the base metal into a more perfected substance like silver or gold. Metals were healed with medicines. In this way, the Philosopher's Stone was considered a perfect universal medicine, not just for metals, but for humans as well, being capable of rejuvenating the old and curing the sick, essentially becoming an elixir of eternal youth. In this way, the Elden Ring is the Philosopher's Stone, something that can shape the universe to the whims of the wielder. Indeed, Marika does this when she removes the Rune of Death, just as one might remove a corrupted corpuscle from lead, and this was when the Golden Order was created. There's a great deal of gendered symbolism in alchemy too, with the masculine sun and the silvery feminine moon. The sun is associated with gold and silver with the moon. Gold, the masculine sun, and silver, the feminine moon, which together made up the noble metals and the most pure forms that prima materia could take. Do we know of a golden male and a silvery female moon that married together? I think we do, but it gets even more wild because we know that Radagon and Marika are technically the same person, right? A male and a female that are simultaneously the same but different. This mirrors the rebus, which is the end product of the alchemical magnum opus. After going through all the stages of putrefaction, opposing qualities like dry, hot gold and wet, cold silver are separated before finally being unified once more, forming the rebus, which is symbolized as the unification of sun and moon, male and female, a human person that is both male and female simultaneously. Just like Radagon and Marika. And Marika is the vessel of the Elden Ring, which is the Philosopher's Stone. It's almost too perfect. She gains the rebus quality when she herself becomes the Elden Ring. And then there's the Tarnished. In Elden Ring's promotional art and in the network tests, the Tarnished is often shown wearing a Raging Wolf armor set, the armor that is worn by Vargrim the Bloody Wolf, and one of the first Tarnished to visit Round Table Hold. In alchemy, there is a wolf symbol, because of course there is, and it's associated with lead, known as Lupus Metallorum. And alchemist Paracelsus says that it is known as the white lead of wise men, or simply the lead. It is associated with adaptability and transformation, and it combines easily with other metals. In short, the Tarnished is the base metal lead, cheap, malleable, heavy, and cold, totally without the grace that would make them golden. They are on a journey to purification, however, and through gathering the pieces of the Philosopher's Stone, or Elden Ring, they are able to... Okay, here's my favorite part. Remember, the end fight takes place at the center of the Erd Tree, right? The Erd Tree is currently on fire at the end of the game. Burning. But where is the Erd Tree growing? On top of the crucible, the wellspring of all life. Lead tarnished gold enters the area where the crucible is. Crucibles are containers that are meant to be placed into furnaces where you heat and melt metals using fire. The kind of thing you would put lead into to combine it with the Philosopher's Stone in order to heal it and create gold. The tarnished literally enters a crucible and comes out of it an Elden Lord, gifted with grace after it's been removed so unceremoniously. This extends to the other endings as well. The Tarnished is able to introduce any number of what are called mending runes to heal the Elden Ring to give it new properties. In Ranni's ending, it's as though instead of choosing an age of gold and ascending to grace, the Tarnished instead chooses an age of silver. Still a noble ascension from a base state. And the Frenzied Flame ending? Even it has alchemical origins. The Frenzied Flame believes that everything was better before the greater will created life, in so doing creating strife and despair. It aims to burn everything to the ground so that it may be unified in chaos. In short, it wants to reduce everything to its prima materia. There's this concept in alchemy called palingenesis, the idea that you can bring things back to life by burning them and then freezing the ashes. This has less plot significance, but it's a concept you see a lot in Elden Ring as well, specifically with the spirit summons and ashes of war. Spirit summons are ashes ash and remains of things that were once living, and they can be summoned once more to aid whoever has the power to call upon them. Ashes of war, meanwhile, are the remains of those who fought and died in battle, and you breathe life into them by utilizing battle techniques that they knew in life. So to say again, Elden Ring is an alchemical story that in multiple layers tells the tale of mundane, base things ascending into gilded goldhood, with heavy theming around the Elden Ring, the Elden Lord, and the gods. Tarnished, led through the fires of combat, finds themselves in a crucible with the Philosopher's Stone, and in a final test of transmutation, arises as a golden lord. There's actually a lot more to dig into here. I'm not even remotely kidding when I say I'm just scratching the surface of the subject here. I didn't even talk about the fingers or how Rykard resembles the Ouroboros and how that ties into the alchemical idea of the all is one. And I didn't even talk about Carl Jung and his alchemy stuff and the shadow and the animus and the anima. And if you want to dig deeper into this subject, I've got some links in the description to the original Reddit thread, which is a bit outdated because it's based on pre-release information, but it's still a great place to start. Wow, holy cow, this is going to be my longest video I've ever done. I'm pretty sure. Sorry it took me so long to get this to you. Just got a lot going on, and this video was a lot, and I just barely scratched the surface. I hope I got you interested in alchemy as an academic study. It's all bunk. It doesn't work. There's no such thing as turning lead into gold without nuclear fusion, but I mean, as an intellectual and thematic and literary thing, it's very, very fascinating. And I have to put out a personal thank you to my Patreon patrons who are patient and endearing, and I love them, and they make sure this show happens in spite of everything that may go down. This show will, this show, channel, everything will still happen because of my Patreon patrons who are amazing. So I have to throw out a personal shout out to Sean Lude, M. Lopez, JDubs97, Dr. Vem, Ronald Coleman, Alan Hagers, Edit AMTP, Marissa Resnick, Nick Patterson, and Loretta Mazurf. I am gonna go, well, I'm gonna go edit this video, as I usually say. I actually have a good round of applause for Tanya. Tanya's coming back to help me with this video. We're doing well off enough to get Tanya back, so woohoo, Tanya! So I guess Tanya's gonna go edit this. I'm gonna do the audio. She's gonna do the main editing. I might end up helping her. We'll see how it goes. Long ass video. Bye! A lowly tarnished, devoid of grace. I'm so freaking bad at this game. I'm bad at almost every first-person shooter in the world, honestly. It's an easy concept. Click heads, make deads. But no matter what I do to my mouse sensitivity settings, no matter how much I practice, I remain and will forever be awful at first-person shooters. I was bad at GoldenEye, Doom, Overwatch, Apex Legends. The list is innumerable. I suck. There, I said it. Are you happy? That's why I leave it to the professionals most of the time, because they are so much better than I am. So why am I even playing BattleBit Remastered? Well, partially because everyone else is playing it, like literally everyone else. It seems like I can't swing a stick without hitting someone playing BattleBit, but there's something going on here that's truly special. Otherwise, a $15 indie title developed by like 3 people wouldn't be blowing up as much as this game is. I had thought originally to do a science video on this game and talk about depersonalization or military squad psychology, or to somehow break down what unique technologies are going on in BattleBit that make it such a good game, like server-side versus client-side hit detection, or maybe get into the nitty-gritty about how its game loop was very satisfying, but I'm gonna be real with you. BattleBit is doing almost nothing new behind the scenes. Well, almost nothing new. I've never seen a game before where over 250 people can duke it out amongst each other. And I think that starts to get at the key of what makes BattleBit so fun for everyone, or at least fun for me. Mr. can't hit the broadside of a barn if his life depended on it. The sheer scale of the game is absolutely insane. I think this is the first game I've played where I felt immersed. Yeah, immersed in this Roblox looking thing like I was in an actual war setting. Though obviously I suck and the maneuvers we use in game are probably nothing to what real militaries do, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is the feeling. 126 people on your side is a ton of people, and that's one thing that I like about it personally. The fact that I suck just kind of blends into the crowd. I'm not just in a squad or a 5-man team like Overwatch. I'm a tiny speck of dust where my contributions barely matter. But at the same time, my contributions do matter. Every little victory is a tiny jolt of sweetness, and every defeat doesn't feel so bad since I'm barely significant in the scheme of things. It probably come as no surprise to you that after hours of playing this game, I found my favorite class, and it is the medic. Since I can't shoot worth a damn, healing seems like the best way for me to contribute to my team. I can't shoot, therefore I support people who can. And in this way, BattleBit makes me feel like my contributions matter, even though I'm just a dust speck in a giant nebula. Okay, I'm babbling now. Let's get back on track. You see, BattleBit has taken the pieces of previous games like Battlefield and Call of Duty and put all of the best parts of them together. Combine that with an avid devotion to listening to the fans of those games and scaling it up massively, and you get one of the best games of 2023 in your hands if you judge by sheer participation. They reached nearly 90,000 concurrent players and have made somewhat of $2 million in the first weeks of its launch. It is truly staggering. I think the success of BattleBit can be a major lesson to AAA developers. While new technology is nice and all, and yes, it's true, BattleBit would not have existed 10 years ago in spite of its scaled-back graphics. It truly required modern netcode technology and powerful servers in order to make a 127 versus 127 match work, especially with destructible buildings and environments. It's no exaggeration to say that this game is pushing the limits of what modern first-person shooters are capable of. But while all these technological advancements are amazing and cutting-edge technology will always be a major part of gaming, I think ultimately what matters is whether a game is fun and well designed. And that's not to talk about the $15 price tag. This gives a game like BattleBit a tremendous amount of value for what little it costs to get involved. Who cares that everybody looks like weirdo Lego people? You only paid $15. I'm getting off track again, so let's bring it back. Fun and well designed. This is what gamers want in a game. And that's not to say I want to say goodbye to flashy graphics. I mean, Jedi Survivor was my favorite game of the year so far and might end up being my favorite game of 2023, and its graphics are great, and I'm definitely looking forward to Starfield and whatever oohs and ahs is going to provide for me while I explore the galaxy, but the graphics don't matter if the skeleton of your game is dog shit. I'm going to rip a Reddit comment made by Kickbass Colony Drop on the PC gaming subreddit because I think he made a lot of great points, honestly, and I don't think I could actually say them better myself. BattleBit has 127 versus 127, 64 versus 64, and 32 versus 32 game modes. It gives you the scale, the classes, a progression and unlock system that's non-invasive and non-microtransactive. Here's the crucial part. It gets the fuck out of your way. BattleBit's success stems from delivering on the promises made of the hype claimed, but very transparently. When they say 127 versus 127, it's that. It's absolute chaos. It's a full-scale war with real tug-of-war experience between all the objectives, where solo work and teamwork has real consequences to the ebb and flow of combat and how victory and defeat occurs. He later goes on to say that one of the best features of the game is its open voice over internet protocol, or VoIP for short, and I couldn't agree more. Some funny stuff happens in-game when you can hear people nearby, friend and foe alike. Like one time I thought a dead guy was a dead guy on my team because I'm stupid like that, and I started dragging his body away, and the person on the mic started shouting, "No, bro, stop dragging my body!" Roblox with guns is full of that sort of stuff, and it really adds some real strategy to the game when you know that barking out commands or alerting your team to something going on can get you attention from an enemy. All of this, the cohesion, the scale, and the fact that you die almost instantly when you're shot, all of this combines together to build an incredibly immersive experience, at least for me. One time I remember just panicking when there was a major firefight going on and just hiding under some stairs for 3 minutes to catch my breath before going back into the foray, and you'll often find people like role-playing in the game. Not only will they call for a medic, but they'll like groan like they're actually injured or say ow when they're getting shot. It's freaking fantastic. This is emergent gameplay at its finest, and it can only happen in a game like BattleBit, and I honestly can't think of too many times that people have gotten overly ragey on mic or said major slurs or whatever you'd normally expect from this sort of game. They're actually pretty fast to ban people for acting like crap, and they make you confirm that you're not going to be a bigot in the game or else you'll get banned before you even join a game. It's a nice little reminder that you can't click past easily. I think this made a real difference in how people approach this game versus some other toxic gaming communities out there. You know, there's one sucky thing about the game though, and it's the impact it's going to have on the gaming community. I mean, specifically the AAA games industry community. community. My biggest fear is that the AAA game industry is going to see the success of this game and, like, instead of getting our Fortnite to Apex Legends where we got another big battle royale game that had a totally different vibe, we're going to get instead a bunch of CEOs going, yes, people like Roblox and Minecraft, and now this new Roblox shootery game is making millions of dollars and it's made by just 3 yahoos. Clearly what the people want is games with blocky graphics. That must be it, because everything is so focused on the thin veneer with a lot of AAA titles. They follow what they think are trends and then they make a pile of garbage because, hey, guess what? That thing that you thought was a trend wasn't actually a trend. It's this other thing. I'd probably immediately buy another massively multiplayer first-person shooter game that has this scale or bigger, though, in a heartbeat. This game has dragged me, a non-competitive first-person shooter guy, into its sharp clutches, and because of that, I'm hooked on the formula. So game devs, game producers, and CEOs, I beg you, don't make your takeaway from this game be, we need more Roblox graphics. Listen to the fans of the genres of the games you're making and look at what other people have made and take parts and pieces and put them together in new ways. That's what we really want. That's the lesson of BattleBit. That graphics don't matter. Just make a damn good game. Whew, that was a fun one to make. I had to take a break from playing BattleBit to actually make this video, but hey, that was fun. It was a little different, a little change of pace out there. Instead of the science or something serious, just a little like, Austin wants to talk about BattleBit for a few minutes, like, and then hopefully people watch him talk about BattleBit for a few minutes. This episode is brought to you by my Patreon patrons at patreon.com. They are the real ones that keep this show going, and is the only reason we have ShoddyCast going on at all to begin with. And if you want to be a Patreon patron like these fine people, you can go on over to patreon.com/thescienceyt or patreon.com/shoddycast and contribute whatever you want. All of it is helpful. Even a tiny little bit gets you early access to videos, it gets you access to a special spot in our Discord server, and it gets you a weekly live stream that with just me and like the few of you who actually show up. But it's fun, it's intimate, it's a good time. And so I have to throw out a personal thank you as well to these fine people who paid me extra money to say their names at the end of videos. I'm talking about Sean Lude, M. Lopez, JDubs97, Dr. Vem, Ronald Coleman, Alan Hagers, EditAMTP, Marissa Resnick, Nick Patterson, and Loretta Mazurf. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. That wasn't quite Markiplier-y. It was a little Markiplier-y. I will see you! Actually, old Markiplier. New Markiplier does it different. He does it a little different. That's okay. We're old Marky up here. Hey, this video has spoilers for Jedi Fallen Order, like literally stuff that happens in the last 5 minutes of the game. This is your warning. It's so important that I put it before the mouse click. Okay, anyway, you can click now. Dear... Wait, should it be Respawn or LucasArts? I mean, LucasArts plastered their logo everywhere, and honestly, how am I still doing this same intro contrivance for years? Years! I mean, this intro part here where I click the Google Drive thing, Google Drive doesn't even look like that anymore. Google Docs is its own freaking thing. This is what it looks like now. Even worse, this is literally the exact same video file I used back when I started the series, when it was in 720p. This is upscaled. And what is this typing effect? It doesn't even look right. You know, there's an actual typewriter effect in After Effects now. I mean, this is what Matt's intro looks like. Why am I still doing this garbage with the deer whatever and the click and the... But by now it should be like, bam! Bokeh! Kapow! Avatar! The epic score rises in the background, a tear forms in your eyes, the hairs on your skin prickle up, and you realize that it's time to do some science! But honestly, at this point, I've been running an extended Pavlovian experiment on you, conditioning you to watch my videos when you hear the sound of the mouse click, so what are you gonna do? I love Fallen Order in particular. I like how they kind of sidestepped the power creep problem that was always kind of a problem in Star Wars video games. Instead of playing an OP teenager capable of tearing down Star Destroyers, in Fallen Order you play as Cal Kestis, a Padawan who survived Order 66, and you are not a god. Although by the end of the game you may have learned some fancy tricks, a wall run that Respawn is legally obligated to put into their games, and have made making stormtroopers pee their suits a normal day-to-day operation, except for this guy.
You don't scare me.
What legendary last words. After defeating my Hot Topic goth girlfriend in a one-on-one duel, you come face to face with Darth Vader, who really nails home how much of an amateur you are. Vader is on another level. Not only is he the literal, actual chosen one, he's been honing his skills against Jedi, rogue inquisitors, and hot groupies for years, while Cal's been working on a junkyard planet, listening to Mongolian rock music and going through puberty, surrounded by nothing but rust and aliens. You have no chance. Vader wrecks your stuff and gives no midichlorians about wasting time with parries and carefully dodged swipes. In fact, I learned while writing this episode and trying to get some extra footage that the dude will just pop off and snap your neck like it's nothing if you lollygag too long. Dude has absolutely zero chill about hunting Jedi. Your only recourse is to run away because, you know, that's what you do when you're a boy who's hoping to seal the deal with a Dathomiri witch in a sequel so she can restart the Night Sisters clan with strong stock, and you're being chased by a giant monster wielding a vasectomy lance. You get away, but not really, because of course you didn't, and it's all drama, climax, blah blah blah, and then Cal has the bright idea to break the walls of the hallway that you're in, letting water rush in and allowing him to escape, and you're only able to escape because behind you, Darth Vader is holding back the water rushing in with the Force like a mother effing badass. Sure, it's not as spectacular as like a ton of other displays of Force powers, but the more you start to think about all the things that are happening, the more you realize that this may actually be the most impressive canon display of the Force we have seen performed by any character anywhere, point blank, except for maybe hologram Luke's ability to ignore the limitations of the speed of light and the transmission of information. But honestly, Star Wars has pretty much no respect for Albert Einstein as a general rule, so, you know, sorry, buddy. But let's back up, because I can already hear you saying, pushing back water, Austin, really? That's what your video is about? And to that, I say, hell yes! Because with this, we can accurately measure the brute strength of Vader and suss out the limitations of his powers, just like Tarkin on Chandar's Folly. Oh yeah. That's right, I'm that kind of Star Wars nerd. But let's go over why this scene is so impressive to me, and why I think it's not only illuminating, but a fascinating math puzzle. This scene takes place on Fortress Inquisitorius, the headquarters of Emperor Palpatine's Jedi hunting experts, the Inquisitors. Fortress Inquisitorius is huge and built on the water moon Nur. Nur? Eh, whatever. Most of it is underwater, deep underwater. How deep? We'll get there. Holding back this water takes all of Vader's concentration, which is why Cal and S.i.R are able to escape. So we can reasonably assume that pushing back this torrential flood of water is somewhere near the upper limit of Vader's capabilities, especially since he's been shown to have trouble holding back water on Mon Cala. This is hard to do for him, and honestly, probably very few others could even pull anything close to it off. But why is it so difficult? Simple. Water is very heavy. We don't usually think of water as being that big of a deal, but considering water is what makes up most of our mass, and as anybody who's ever been tasked with carrying jugs of water upstairs can attest, it is not light. Under normal gravity, water weighs almost exactly a kilogram per liter, and that can add up really quickly. What's worse is that the fluids under gravity exert pressure due to being pulled down by, the gravity. At sea level, our atmosphere exerts 101.3 kilopascals of pressure on our bodies because the weight of the entire atmosphere in a single column leading all the way up to the exosphere is pressing down on us. We are all little atlases carrying the sky on our shoulders all the time. Thankfully, air isn't very dense, and even a 10,000 kilometer column of the stuff really isn't that heavy. Meanwhile, you know how deep into the ocean you have to go in order to experience an increase of 1 atmosphere of pressure? 10 meters. That's it. Just 1/10,000% of the depth of the entire atmosphere into water, and the pressure rises a bunch. This is the power of water. Now look at how deep the freaking Fortress Inquisitorius is. Look at it! And Vader is just deadlifting this water like it's nothing. Now, this is the formula we need in order to figure out water pressure. It's delightfully simple compared to some other monsters we've used on this show. P equals H rho G, where P is pressure, H is height or depth, rho is density, and G is gravity. This will work for most fluids. Now, first things first. Before we can even start plugging numbers in, we need a ruler because we have some measurements to make. Y'all know the drill. Pixel measurements are the cornerstone that hold this entire YouTube channel together, and in order to do pixel measurements, you need a reliable ruler, and usually I have trouble finding one, but we have an easy one this time. Bam! Vader himself. He's right there, and he has a cannon height, 2.02 meters. Hey, Daddy.
They say there's something in the water.
Anyway, using Vader's height, we can reverse engineer Cal's height. Using this panel here in the BDSM torture dungeon for reference, we can determine Cal's model height to be about 1.77 meters. Now that we know his height, we can find our first number, gravity. Sure, we can assume the standard 9.8 we have on Earth, but where's the fun in that? This is a space opera. This is a different planet. Let's measure it. And figuring that these laser prison things are 3.75 meters tall, and knowing that Cal makes this 11.025 meter fall in 0.85 seconds, this gives us a wickedly strong gravity of 30.5 meters per second squared, 3 times Earth's gravity. Woohoo, doggy. Okay, let's pop that number into place. Density is an easy one. It's just the density of water, 997 kilograms per cubic meter. Now, depth. This one was tricky, and we'll circle back to it because we have one more thing to figure out. You see, this formula will give us pressure, which is fine, good, very helpful, but our pressure result will be in kilograms per square meter. That is a force over an area, and without an area, this gives us next to no insight into how much weight Vader is actually pushing back. We need to figure out the area of the front part of the water that he's shoving aside, and this is actually doable. It's this cross-section of the tunnel here filled with water. We're gonna simplify it just a little bit, but using these boxes as a reference and assuming that this thing is 2 isosceles trapezoids with bases of lengths 3.679 meters across the top plus 7.576 meters across the bottom, and a height 1 of 4.4 meters up to the top and a height 2 of 1 meter down to the bottom section, we can calculate their areas using the trapezoid area formula of 1/2 the sums of the bases times the height, and adding them together, bam! bam! We have 24.78 square meters. This is useful because we can actually use this tunnel to figure out how deep we are. Using Cheat Engine, we can enable the debug camera, and thank you so much for the work on that, Sunbeam. You are an actual lifesaver. Using the tunnel height, I can calculate how fast the camera moves straight up in debug mode, 10.568 meters per second. Then it's a simple issue of riding this camera from the tunnel here all the way up to the top of the water, which is... Okay, this is wrong because this angle is showing the fortress all the way underwater, but the cinematic shows a good chunk of it poking out above the water, so let's just assume that it's a developer shortcut since they never expected anybody to see this up close and just measure to that spot. And it took us 13.96 seconds to reach this spot exactly, giving us a depth of over 80 fathoms or 147 meters. You know what's really impressive about this? The deepest scuba dive on Earth was over 300 meters by Ahmad Gaber, and he experienced 324,383 kilograms per square meter of pressure. But it turns out that gravity makes a huge freaking difference. Under the 30.5 meters per second squared of gravity on Muir, at a depth of 147 meters, the pressure is more like 4.5 million kilograms per square meter. And it's here where we get to finally plug this magic number into our calculator, hit enter, and hope that the world does not explode. And...
NANI?!
Vader is pushing 136.5 million kilograms away using the Force. You know what that equates to? The Titanic! Fully loaded with people and food and stuff. Actually, he wouldn't even break a sweat lifting the Titanic. Vader could deadlift the Titanic, Big Ben, the Washington Monument, 11 elephants, 50 grand pianos, 5 international space stations, and 10 fully fueled Antonov 255s at the same time, and still have enough Force strength left over to drink a cup of tea with the Force. Vader is a freaking beast. Do or do not, there is no try. Size means nothing. Freaking Yoda nearly had a heart attack lifting an X-Wing out of a swamp. Meanwhile, I'm reasonably certain Vader's over here making Starkiller look like an outclassed baby for struggling to just like barely push an Imperial Star Destroyer a little bit. This dude is strong in the Force in a legitimately terrifying way. Do not mess with Vader, and do not underestimate the power of water ever again. Sincerely, Austin.
They say there's something in the water.
Also, subscribe to the channel. You know it's not banal. Oh, I stole that directly from Michael Swaim. He's a good boy. Anyway, subscribe to the channel. Dear LucasArts. Wait, you know what? No, this isn't the right way to do this. Bum 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 bum. Hi, it's me, Austin. I've been playing LucasArts games almost as long as I can remember, going all the way back to the dark ages of the 90s and the amazing point-and-click adventure game Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. Along with the masked renegade Zorro, Indiana Jones was my favorite hero as a child. You know, I also had a crush on Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman in Batman Returns. You know, that's a lot of whips. Probably was an early warning sign for my adulthood proclivities. Where was I? Oh, right, LucasArts. I love you guys. You and the rest of the expanded universe are single-handedly responsible for saving the Star Wars franchise during the crisis known as the prequel trilogy. Because of you guys and your good writing, you've managed to keep people interested in a franchise that was in danger of devolving into a pile of George Lucas's dried spunk. So for that, I thank you. Now that we've gotten this out of the way, I have to tell you something that's been bugging me for years. And that thing is this: your lightsabers make no goddamn sense. And to be entirely fair, this isn't technically your fault. You didn't invent the things, but
we are a video game channel, and so, you know, I have to justify this rant somehow. You know, when I was a kid, I always wanted a lightsaber. I imagined myself getting revenge on the dickheads in my science class who, for some reason, liked to validate their masculinity by throwing shit at the back of my head. I'd show them, pow, no more dicks for you, motherfuckers. But although I got older, realized my own inner sexiness, and stopped giving a shit about what mediocre, accomplished nothing suburban fuckheads thought, I never quite lost my love for these fantastic fantasy weapons. They're just damned cool. Of course, I'm soon to be a parent now, and I find myself becoming increasingly aware of everyday dangers that surround us, both real and fictional, and lightsabers are fucking dangerous. I never really appreciated this before. I thought of them as, I don't know, glowy versions of the sticks me and my friends used to fake sword fight with. And you know what? Even those goddamn sticks are dangerous. I got gored more than once and hid what I'm pretty sure was a wound that needed stitches from my parents. I still have the scar, but no. Lightsabers are way, way worse than sticks, swords, and as you'll see in a little bit, maybe even goddamn guns. Let's back up for a second and rehash the lore of lightsabers. Lightsabers are flashlights that emit deadly as fuck beams of energy and are capable of cutting through just about anything under the sun, or under two suns as the case may or may not be. On a basic level, they're comprised of a few things: a power cell, a few focusing crystals, because this is goddamn space magic, you gotta have your fucking crystals, thingy-mabobbers, circuits, channels, and all kinds of shit. You flick a switch and energy does things, and okay, it's all bullshit, all right? It's all bullshit. Originally, in the back when times, they were attached to battery packs that were strapped to a Jedi's waist like ugly-ass fanny packs, but eventually they took on the modern, awesome form that we've become familiar with. And, of course, we got weird iterations like Darth Maul's saber staff, Kylo Ren's what-the-fuck thing, and at peak absurdities, lightsaber whips, because at some point, writers stopped giving a shit and just snorted all the coke in the room. Now, let's set one thing straight. Lightsabers are not actual swords made of light. That's what we call a laser, and they don't just magically stop at a certain length. They go on effectively forever. Plus, they don't behave like light either. They physically interact with surrounding materials, creating resistance for the wielder. This is not how light behaves. Now, the lore for lightsabers does indicate that the blades are massless, which is nonsense if they're not actually made of light. But, you know, I'll buy that they're very, very light, if not actually massless. Modernity seems to have caught up with lightsaber technology, and everyone seems to be saying that the blades are made of plasma these days. And you know what? That's a brilliant choice. Plasma, as we've gone over many, many times on this channel, is a gas, or really any substance, that's been either heated up to an incredibly high temperature, compressed to an incredibly dense density, or a mix of the two to the point where the electrons start going berserk. Some atoms have more electrons than they should, others have less than they're supposed to. Cats and dogs are living together. It's mass hysteria in a plasma. As a result, these atoms get either a positive or a negative charge. In fact, it's this quality that gives lightsabers their first major feature, and is incidentally one of the first things we actually see a lightsaber do in Star Wars: deflection of blaster fire. Blasters, which also fire plasma, because I guess we're just gonna be as irresponsible as we can with materials capable of melting your face off, can be deflected by lightsabers. In theory, because they both carry the same magnetic charge. Have you ever tried to stick two magnetic ends together when they have the same charge? It doesn't work, they just push away. Unfortunately, we hit our first little snag here. For one, while atoms in the plasma state are totally ionized, not all the atoms in the plasma ionize with the same charge. In fact, while one atom loses an electron, it's likely that another atom will pick that up, either replacing one that it's lost or giving it more than it's supposed to have. As a result, most plasmas as a whole have a neutral charge. Of course, even in our own world, we've had luck manipulating the magnetic fields of plasmas to be either primarily positive or primarily negative, but this doesn't exactly fix our problem. In order to deflect a plasma, it would definitely have to have the same charge as your lightsaber. If it were the opposite charge, it would actually get attracted to the blade, gaining velocity as it approached, and you'd risk it flying through the lightsaber entirely and smacking you in the face even faster than it would have if left alone. An easy counter to an ionized lightsaber would be to have a blaster that's capable of changing ionization at the flick of a switch. Meet the Jedi Slayer 9000! Are you a stormtrooper whose friends keep dying to pesky Jedi assholes who are sending your blaster bolts flying back at you? Pick up the Jedi Slayer 9000! The instant you see a Jedi starting to block your fire and send it back, just flick a switch and our handy-dandy blaster will start alternating ionized states, turning that annoying person in a robe into a glowing flesh pile in minutes. And of course, if the lightsabers are neutrally charged, blaster bolts would just pass through them as though they weren't even there. Not exactly an ideal situation, but whatever. We've been over bolt deflection before. It's an awesome pony trick that, at the end of the day, is essentially made of bullshit. What about the good stuff? You know, like the cutting through anything like a hot knife through butter, severing arms, legs, heads, hands, and rendering even the most badass steel doors irrelevant? This is where lightsabers are not only fun as fuck, but totally fucking feasible. As opposed to being a single straight beam, lightsabers are actually a very narrow arc, so the material that's being heated up gets piped back into the lightsaber to be reheated. In theory, the plasma is contained and guided by a magnetic field, which, as I stated before, is a real phenomenon that we've seen in our real world. Now, while plasma seems fancy and science fiction-y, we actually use plasma all the time in our real world. It's in lights, TVs, and is even used to weld metals. That's right, plasma is used in our everyday world to cut through metal, just like Qui-Gon did in Phantom Menace. So, how hot would a lightsaber have to be in order to pull this off? Well, it depends. As I said before, lightsaber blades can't possibly be massless if they're plasma. They can, though, be light as hell. If we were to take, I don't know, 100 grams of our favorite gas to turn into a plasma, hydrogen, the blade would weigh less than 2 Snickers bars. That's pretty damn light. Steel is kind of a bitch. It actually has a relatively low specific heat capacity, the amount of energy needed to heat it up, than lots of other materials, but it's very, very dense. The average lightsaber blade has a diameter of a little over 2.5 centimeters, so in order for it to melt through, say, a 1 foot thick steel door, we have to do a little bit of math. Doing this math, we discover the volume of the steel the lightsaber needs to penetrate, and knowing that, we just need to plug in a density of steel, and we get 1.2 kilograms just for a good old stabbing. The melting temperature of steel is over 1800 degrees Kelvin, and the specific heat is 0.49, which means that for every degree raised, it takes 0.49 joules per gram, but that's not enough. You see, anytime a substance undergoes a phase change, going from a solid to a liquid, or from a liquid to a gas, it requires a huge jump of energy to make that leap, which means that for every gram of steel, we need an extra 293 joules of energy. Damn it! Pushing all this shit together, we get 1.2 megajoules. All right, that's a lot, but, you know, not ridiculous. In order to get this hot enough using our plasma sword weighing 100 grams, our blade would have to be heated up to a balmy 3000 degrees Kelvin. Awesome! Well, it's good to know that some things about this fantasy world aren't complete bullshit. Of course, well, this creates some problems, the least of which being that lightsabers at this temperature would effectively have no color at all and would be a blinding white light. Speaking of blinding, what we have here is effectively a plasma welding torch. Granted, a slightly cooler one than most because of the larger volume of hydrogen, but a torch nonetheless. And there's one thing you'll notice in all these movies and all these video games, comics, and books, ain't nobody wearing protective eyewear. At these temperatures and masses, these blades are off-putting a staggering amount of ultraviolet light. Not enough to give you a sunburn, but way more than enough to burn your goddamn eyeballs to death if exposed for too long. And Jedi use these things all the fucking time. Their eyes should be practically useless, scabby husks of pus and sadness, not to mention that all those sparks you see everywhere aren't like the harmless sparks you get while using a sander against a piece of metal. They're straight up molten steel and metal. One of these tiny sparks is hot enough to sear through your clothing and give you a vicious 3rd-degree burn. This shit happens to real welders all the time. One slip up and a spark hits you where you're unprotected and your goddamn month is ruined. Lightsabers are way more dangerous to the person foolish enough to actually turn one on than they actually are to anybody wearing a white plastic helmet. So, no, I think I'm good living in a world where lightsabers aren't real. I don't want one anymore. They seem fucking terrible. Fuck. Now I see why folk are so hellbent on ridding the world of Jedi. They're probably just burning down buildings and causing rampant 3rd-degree burns everywhere they go. Fucking zealous assholes. Sincerely, Austin. P.S. I actually have a little bit of extra time. So, for funsies, let's do one more thing as a bonus. The Force Unleashed was supposed to be awesome. Instead, it was mediocre, and it completely upended pretty much everything established in the expanded universe and otherwise about how powerful the Force is. Yoda, one of the most powerful Force users in the galaxy, struggles to keep a tiny pillar upright, but Starkiller, a shithead with an even more annoying name, is capable of downing a goddamned Imperial-class Star Destroyer in the worst quick-time event known to man. Imperial Star Destroyers are 1,600 meters long and weigh over 6 million tons, aka an assload of kilograms. Using frames from the cinematic, we can see that the tip of the Star Destroyer hits the ground at a 20-degree angle. Using our trusty geometry, we discover that it travels a distance of almost 560 meters in 1.4 seconds at a speed of nearly 400 meters per second, which is faster than the speed of sound. The Star Destroyer experiences over 40 Gs of acceleration, which means that for a brief period of time, it has a weight force of over 232 billion kilograms, or half the mass of the entire human population. For that brief 1.4 seconds, it would be like if you took half the people on our planet and just plunked them down in one spot. The kinetic energy needed to move this behemoth is over 454 trillion joules, or the amount of fucking energy a goddamn hurricane releases in 4 seconds. God damn it, Starkiller is literally a fucking hurricane. And instead of, I don't know, just blowing up the engine with his apparently infinitely powerful force powers, he decided to be a complete shithead and just like throw it down like some sort of animal. What a fuckhead. Asshole. Thank you for watching my episode about Star Wars. This one's actually pretty requested. I liked it. This was a lot of fun. I have always loved the Star Wars universe, and I really love the most recent movie. I have not played Knights of the Old Republic as much as I probably should have. I know that makes me a terrible person, but it's true. I have played the Old Republic, or whatever the MMO was, and I also played the game that for some reason is 1,000,000 years old, and still no one has made a better lightsaber game than that, and that is Jedi Academy. I'm betting, this is past Austin, I'm betting I used a bunch of footage from that game in the video, but the video, how did they not get better at it? They've had years to make a better lightsaber game, and they can't. They suck at it. Thank you to our Patreon supporters who made this show possible with their incredible donations to our channel. They are awesome. And if you would like to be a Patreon supporter, you can go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/ShoddyCast, where you get all kinds of back behind the scenes action stuff. And you get, if you donate $3 a month, you actually get early access to videos like this one and ones like Andrew does in the Storyteller, of course. And I'm gonna go make this episode now. I built a lightsaber for it. I'm so excited. Woo! Oh yeah, and go watch me play Overwatch on Twitch. My tournament got postponed by a week because people are really bad about answering their emails. Oh, people, answer your emails. Emails. Who's got the emails? All right, bye.
Dear Paradigm Games. Hi, it's me, Austin. Although to be honest, I'm not super sure if I want to address this video to Gray Still Plays instead of Paradigm Games, because honestly, I have been extremely, and I mean extremely tempted to fact check videos of his before. Not because he's done anything wrong, just because I'm a fan and he plays games that are good to nitpick, and I'm a nitpicker. And like, how can I resist a game like Solar Smash, which lets you literally carve up the entire planet with a super powerful death ray? Oh, it is on like Donkey Kong! Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Solar Smash is a mobile game where you get to indulge your worst impulses in the form of a kid with a magnifying glass versus some ants. However, instead of a magnifying glass, it is Cthulhu, and instead of an anthill, it is an entire freaking planet. Plus, I've wanted to do a Death Star video for ages, so here we go! There's all sorts of things I could look at in Solar Smash, from the Cthulhu monster, the ghost punching guy, the missile swarm, and the laser that's able to carve the planet in half without destroying it somehow. But to keep it simple, we're gonna look at the Death Ray, the big baddie that's capable of destroying the planet entirely in one shot. Is this even possible? How would you do it if it were possible? And how many Duracell batteries would it take to power such a device? My guess is two batteries. They're very good. Please sponsor me. Okay, so to get it out of the way first, exploding a planet is totally possible. How do I know this? Because suns can explode. Novae and supernovae and hypernovae all are things that explode out in the wider universe. If you put enough energy into anything at all, it will explode. Well, or turn into a black hole. I guess you can't really explode a black hole either, except I guess technically by Hawking radiation. But hey, did you know that there's a theoretical size limit to how big black holes can get? They're called ultra-massive black holes, which can get as big as 50 billion solar masses, which at this size, we're talking... Wait, okay, you know what? No, I'm not getting sidetracked talking about black holes. Maybe if this video does well, we'll do a video on Universe Sandbox. That'd be a pretty good excuse. Where was I? Oh, right. Put enough energy into anything and it'll explode. Boom. Okay, so how much energy do we need to put into a thing to make it explode? Well, it depends upon what you're trying to make blow up. In our case, we actually know what we're trying to explode. It is the entire Earth. In order to explode the Earth, you're gonna have to put enough energy into it to overcome the forces holding it together. When you explode like a firecracker or something, the energy released by the chemical bonds forming inside the firecracker heat up and expand, putting pressure on the thing containing it, a cardboard tube. In order to explode, it has to overcome the forces holding the tube together. Does that make sense? Same thing with the Earth, except the force that needs to be overcome is the force of gravity, as opposed to the molecular bonds between glue and pulverized wood fibers that make up the cardboard exterior of the firecracker. Essentially, you have to overcome the gravitational power holding the Earth together, and the rest will handle itself. And thankfully, there's actually a formula for calculating how much energy is holding the planet together, and it is really, really simple. It's just 3gm squared divided by 5r. Now, this formula looks simple on its face, but it's actually surprisingly complicated and requires many integrals and calculus, all of which simplify to this perfect, tiny little gem. 3 times the universal gravitational constant times the mass of the object squared divided by 5 times the radius. Mwah! When we plug in the values for the Earth, 6.3 million meters for the radius and 5.97 times 10 to the 24th power kilograms, we get a whopping result of 2.24 times 10 to the 32 joules of energy, or 223.9 billion yotta-joules, which is the bare minimum energy required to explodify the entire planet. For context, that's more energy than we get from the sun, like, ever. Seriously, that's 66.5 billion years worth of solar radiation that reaches us on our tiny little world. Given that the entire lifespan of our solar system is estimated to last a total of only like 10 billion years, suffice to say that this is a tremendously large amount of energy. But it's not an amount that you can't like get your head around. And in fact, the total actual output of the sun being 384.6 yottawatts, if we could somehow dunk the sun into water and let it spin up a turbine like a power plant, it'd take just shy of a week to generate the amount of energy we would need to power this death laser. Or plasma beam. Honestly, at energies this huge, it's not even like it matters that much. The death beam in Solar Smash fires for, according to my calculations timing how long it takes the Earth to spin in place in the game and adjusting it to a realistic timescale. Sorry, I got sidetracked. The Earth in the game spins faster than the real Earth for aesthetic reasons, but don't worry your little head, I definitely accounted for that. Okay, so the beam fires for approximately 974 seconds, or just over 16 real-world minutes, adjusting for timescale, outputting 6 days worth of solar energy in that short amount of time, outputting 229.7 thousand yottawatts of power. Which, for the record, even if the Earth didn't explode, everything on it would definitely be dead, which is something you do see in the game. The instant the beam, laser, or whatever hit the atmosphere, everything it came into contact with would instantly become plasma, hotter than the core of the sun. The massive spike in heat would create a huge pressure wave that would move out from the point of impact, vaporizing nearby buildings and reverberating around the entire Earth. It wouldn't be like an atmosphere anymore. The pressure wave would be so dense and hit so hard that it would be like a wall of thick steel ripping around the globe, bulldozing everything in its path. Within minutes of first contact, there would not be a single living mammal on the surface of the planet. There might be some fish alive in the sea, but as soon as the pressure waves from the beam boring into the crust hit the ocean, boom! Sea life is dead too. Maybe some single cellular life may remain. It's not totally clear how pressure waves impact all of them, but within 5 minutes, there would be no more animal kingdom. As the beam pushes through the crust and closer to the core, earthquakes unlike anything that have ever been felt on this planet would rip through it like Taco Bell rips through my digestive tract, shattering entire mountains and filling canyons. Even after the beam was fired, the intense heat from the vaporized, and I quite literally mean vaporized, iron and nickel from our molten core would start to expand out, straining against its own gravity as the tremendously huge energy infused in the molecules keeps them moving too fast to care. It's entirely likely that the positron and electron pairs generated from this massive infusion of energy into our world would result in the obliteration of matter altogether, sending gamma and X-rays in all directions, causing even more havoc. Eventually, the pressures and energies reached would be too much, and gravity would become laughably insufficient to hold the planet together. I mean, we're talking 6 days of sun energy levels here. Gravity does not even enter the equation anymore. And like that, the Earth will be powderized, sending every particle that once made it up flying off into infinity forever. And for what it's worth, the beam in Solar Smash gets it kind of right. It's close. It's really close. Adjusted for real-life timescales, it does take a little too long for the Earth to explode, kind of funnily enough. But other than that, it's absolutely totally spot on to how it would actually happen. I have no idea how that little tiny alien spaceship the size of Florida manages to cram 6 days of the sun's total output into its interior, but I mean, it's technically possible. I mean, I calculated the mass equivalent of that amount of energy and got 2.49 times 10 to the 15 kilograms, which has a Schwarzschild radius